Hi, I'm Mike Reynolds, a senior reporter covering the media industry with S&P Global Market Intelligence, Tech, Media, and Telecom News Team. Welcome to Media Talk, a podcast hosted by S&P Global, where the news and research staff explore issues in the ever-evolving media landscape. Today, I'm joined by Lynnette Luna. Lynnette is a senior research analyst in the Kagan Media Research Group with S&P Global Market Intelligence. She leads its coverage of the U.S. consumer, mobile, and tower markets. How are you doing today, Lynnette?
I'm well. Thank you, Mike. Thanks for having me.
All right. Well, thanks for joining us. Lynette is going to help us make some sense of the mobile business in this nation this year and a decade out. She recently published her forecast for the industry under the headline U.S. Mobile Projections Through 2034. It's a business that impacts just about every American one way or another. As such, industry revenues are expected to nudge the $300 billion mark this year. Let's get to it. I guess it's a postpaid phone subscription world, one that's growing, albeit slowly. Lynette, where did subscriptions map out in 23?
For postpaid phone subscriptions, we estimated 254 million postpaid subscriptions. That includes our public operators that we cover, and then we run a few estimates for some of the private operators that don't report. So that's still below the U.S. population, but when you consider, postpaid subscriptions as a whole, it's reaching almost on par with the U.S. population.
Okay. And growth, a little bit of growth for this year, Lynette?
There was a little bit of growth. It's what industry executives had expected. It's just slowing a little bit because of market saturation. And I think there's a little bit of a less impetus for consumers to upgrade their smartphones right now. The economy has kept them from upgrading to new, more expensive plans. And also, I think there's a lack of new form factors and new services. So there's a lot of hope on the next iteration of the iPhone, which has more AI capabilities in it.
Okay.
So we'll see how that impacts Christmas sales and things going forward.
All right. Yeah. Again, most of us have a phone, right? It's a question of, do you have the money? Do you want to upgrade? Is it good enough until something really catches your eye? So I guess we're in that mode in a little bit. If postpaid is climbing a little bit, maybe prepaid is on the downturn. There was a subscriber retreat from 22 to 23. More of the same this year, Lynette?
Yeah, that's what we're seeing, especially from Verizon. It keeps recording. I think it's either plateaued or keeps recording a decline. Postpaid offerings are so good that customers are really attracted to those. And I think that companies like T-Mobile have done a pretty good job of things like if you pay your bill on time for 12 months, you qualify for a postpaid plan. And some of the pricing pretty much mirrors postpaid. You pay as you go, but it's still pretty similar. And carriers are really putting a lot of their efforts into postpaid, offering kind of the best smartphone deals, et cetera.
Yes, they're pushing the customers in that direction in one form or another.
Yeah, and they're higher paying customers too.
Affordable Connectivity Program, ACP, has been mentioned on Media Talk in the past, and I guess that's a factor here as well. I think with ACP's impact, I think Verizon got hit pretty hard with this, right, Lynette?
We saw that in the second quarter.
On the other side, T-Mobile's benefiting here.
I don't think they saw as aggressive as a loss, but also depends on where they're offering prepaid services. Are they offering it in more rural areas? And I think Verizon was more hit just because they have more of a widespread prepaid presence. T-Mobile benefited from its acquisition of Mint and Ultra Mobile. So it saw a nice bump and prepaid
Okay.
there.
There again, and I guess the other thing I just wanted to catch up if we can, after the Mint acquisition closed, and obviously it's having an impact now. Back in May, T-Mobile announced its intent to buy U.S. Cellular for, I think, about $4.4 billion. Can you remind us, Lynette, of the strategy behind this prospective acquisition? Any update? These things usually take a year or more to close, right?
Yeah, I haven't heard any update. I always felt like it would pass regulatory muster just because of the type of spectrum assets that it bought. It didn't buy a whole bunch of mid-band spectrum from US Cellular, which I think might have caused a little problem there because it has a lot of mid-band spectrum already. So it bought more of some millimeter wave and it bought some lower band spectrum, some other things like AWS. I think some of it did buy some 3.45 gigahertz. It also bought some C-band. So it bought like a variety of spectrum bands from US Cellular to round out its portfolio. And then I saw on Friday, Verizon is another buyer of US Cellular spectrum, and it looks like a lot of it is complementary in the 850 band, and that I think there was another unnamed carrier that bought some other spectrum. So really, US Cellular is getting broken up piece by piece rather than one entity just swallowing it up. And I think that helps pass some regulatory muster there.
Interesting. Before the other players jumped in more recently, again, if things are quiet, no news is good news. Is that kind of an operating metric there, if you will?
I think so. A lot of these carriers really test the waters first to see if these things will pass. Saw AT&T and T-Mobile a long time ago try to merge and that didn't pass. But I think now they really look into and talk to regulators first to see whether these things might pass because that's a lot of money they'd be losing.
Sure. Yeah, exactly. Better to be safe than sorry, for sure. All right. Let's get back to prepaid mobile realm. Longer term, Kagan sees some slight growth out into the next decade.
Yes, I think just less than 1% growth. So there's always
Okay.
that subset of customers that want prepaid or can't qualify for postpaid. But I think the majority of the efforts continue to be on postpaid service.
How about in wholesale subscription realm? This is where the cable companies are, right? Growth ahead here?
Yes, they are forecast to record some of the greatest growth in the industry, and that's primarily because of cable operators and their aggressiveness in getting new subscribers. They've been really aggressive in the market, offering pretty good deals on smartphones, and I think they've been revamping some of their pricing plans. So they have a lot of room to grow in terms of I did an article a while back in terms of broadband passings versus postpaid cable customers, and there's still a lot of room to grow. So I think we'll see them pretty aggressive. And I think some of the standard wholesale operators will get more aggressive as well. And we'll probably see the rise of new types of wholesale providers, especially as 5G Advanced comes and 6G comes. There's the whole idea that IoT market will explode. And we already have seen MVNOs in the market that just specialize in things like IoT. So I can see different MVNOs targeting different segments of the market going forward.
Interesting. 5G is also helping the Comcast, Charters, Altice of the world boost their mobile positions, going after it a little bit harder in the business to business arena.
Yes, I think
Okay.
it's all about bundling too in the consumer market. You see the carriers, mobile carriers competing with cable providers on fixed wireless, and then you see the cable providers competing with the mobile providers on mobile services. I think that we'll see a bigger rise to bundled services and T-Mobile getting into the fiber business because fixed wireless has been so popular. I was on a conference call recently where they talked about they have 1 million people that are on a waiting list to get on fixed wireless. So they're hoping things like fiber will help offset that demand.
Interesting. Okay. Nice to have that kind of buildup. Or
Mhm.
conversely, let's get at it, guys. Anyway, now let's get to the money. As noted, total US mobile revenue is expected to finish at just under 300 billion this year. And that was up, I think, like 4% from 23. What levers are helping the business financially at this point?
I think mobile service revenue is really strong. Mobile equipment revenue has been less so just because of the slow upgrades, hardware upgrades. And that's not necessarily a bad thing because that can also be a drag on financials when you start offering really aggressive smartphone upgrades. So I think carriers will continue to be careful. This is a mature business, so it's a lot easier to forecast as well. So I think we'll see a real focus on driving service revenue. A lot of the strategy is adding new services to higher end bundles, right? There is an element of smartphone upgrades in terms of allowing customers to upgrade anytime they want, but they also have to pay more per month to do that.
So you see, again, looking ahead to next year, 25, you see an uptake, and then longer term, you guys, where do you take us out as we get into the next decade, Lynette? I think 2034 is the time frame you guys have predicted where the business will be at.
Yeah, we see total mobile revenue growing at 5%. You have to account too for new technologies coming in, like 6G coming in around 2033,
Okay.
2032. And that there's a lag time, right? You have investment first, and then you finally see revenue from that. So I think starting in 2034, we see 6G starting to contribute to mobile revenues. There'll be continual enhancements to 5G that should help drive revenue. What I don't cover is the business side, and that's really what a lot of carriers are focusing on in terms of more capabilities for 5G. You have public private partnerships, private wireless, you have IoT with RedCap coming. And so there's a lot of things on the business side that doesn't really account for consumer, but that usually trickles down into the consumer side eventually.
Gotcha. I gotcha. You'd mentioned the word before, saturation, maturation. Saturation sounds better.
Yeah.
Anyway, is there everybody's going mobile? Kids, they have phones. Old folks like me, maybe we don't know how to use our smartphones properly or to its best advantage. But how big can this get? Are we near the end of to the people that want to have, do have?
Every quarter, when I write up the quarterlies, I'm like, where is this growth coming from? Because they keep seeing growth, right? And I think you're right. It's kids getting smartphones at younger ages. I think it's people getting more than one phone. I think a lot of people lately have been carrying around a corporate phone and also a
Okay.
personal phone because they don't want their business, they don't want their company tracking them on their private phone. I've seen that a lot. I've seen, yeah, older generations also adopting more advanced phones. I think my mom is an example. She moved from just a flip phone recently to a smartphone finally. So I think a lot of them are seeing the need for more advanced phones to connect with their family. So yeah, it's interesting. I think it's just pushing more and more into more sub segments and people owning more than one phone as well.
I think I read in your article almost 606 million subscriptions in 2034. That's total penetration of 169%. Seems ginormous.
Yes, and I think that also comes from postpaid connected devices going forward. We have pretty high growth for that, 8.8% CAGR. And that's
Okay.
just because of 5G and higher data speeds. And there's a lot of movement towards enabling more devices with 5G that you can add to a subscription. I think smartwatches are an example of that. And I think we'll finally see maybe more PCs 5G enabled. We haven't seen a lot of that, even though the capability is there. It's just the price needs to come down. And it depends on what carriers want to sell in their pricing plans. There used to be a big push for tablets and then they ease off on tablets. And so it depends on how they want to bolster their customer base. Those are also lower ARPU customers when you add more devices, but it also makes more of a sticky customer, right? When they're subscribed to more than one device and service on your plan, it's harder to leave.
That's why I pay on the video side. That's why I pay $250 a month. Anyway, we've heard this before and color me devil's advocate or naysayer. AR, VR glasses, better 5G networks. Is this going to make an impact? Again, if you don't have to wear glasses, you don't want to wear them. I'm sorry. And Lynnette, tell me why. Is this for real or is this just, again, the threat, the potential of AR, VR making a mark?
I think it's still for real. Everything goes through that proverbial hype cycle, right? Where, oh, there's going to be amazing growth. And then reality kind of sets in. And then there's growth again. I don't know if you've gone on like Meta's website where they sell smart glasses, but it's pretty interesting. I'm interested in getting a pair where you can look at things and be like, oh, what kind of flower is that? And your smart glasses can tell you if you're a gardener, et cetera, or if you're
Okay.
shopping for something. So I think it's going to be slow. These technologies take a little while just for adoption and to understand how to use them. And I think that's the same, like I talked about AI in smartphones too. And I think that's probably takes a little while. There's like a user curve, right? The usage curve, just
Right.
getting used to these type of technologies. And I think that the AR, VR glasses are getting better. The price point needs to come down a little more. It's going to happen, but I can't say on this day, all of a sudden everybody's going to start buying AR glasses. But I think
Uh,
it's just like a gradual, like I said earlier too, our VR glasses have really have taken off more in the enterprise side, especially you have like plumbers that need to look at something. That's just an example. Figure out a part and they can look at it and their smartphone
yeah.
might
So
tell
there's
them
a,
what kind
so
of
there's
part they need.
So there's business or hobby reasons, if there's something really into, so it gets some nice some of these products.
Yes.
Okay. All right. You had alluded to 6G earlier, 5G still wending its way through. 6G is going to bring us what? Mind transmissions.
Yeah, more of the same, but faster data speed. It operates in very high frequencies, so we're not gonna see, like, the entire nation covered. It'll be in hot pockets where it's really needed, maybe in more urban areas, overlaid on 5G. So 5G is gonna be around for a really long time. 6G is more kind of complementary on it. They're still trying to even figure out what spectrum it could be used for. Won't be like what we've seen with 4G and 5G, like all of a sudden somebody's lit up like a nationwide 6G network. It's
Okay.
just a little different that way, just because of the propagation characteristics are so high. Although you have companies like Qualcomm really working on using MIMO antennas, et cetera, to make it more of a layered technology that can be used in wider spread areas. Technology is an amazing thing, right? Things you thought were impossible 10 years ago are possible today.
And as you mentioned earlier, probably starting to see some 6G action early in the next decade. And again, then there's the lag time before there's adoption.
Yes.
In closing, Lynnette, where do we stand? The business continues to grow, maturation, saturation. But again, as you've mentioned all along here, the technology continues to improve and we always want better, right?
Oh, yes. I think near term growing postpaid service revenue is a priority among operators. It's been that way for a little bit as the market matures. Operator strategies for subscription and revenue growth will continue to center on upgrading existing lower paying customers to premium plans. How many times has T-Mobile introduced a new premium plan? Like a couple times now, right? A new premium plan that costs more, you get a few more bells and whistles in there. And then carriers are really working hard to expand to more rural markets and adding additional devices to subscriptions, like I mentioned earlier. And AI is going to be pretty prominent in these businesses. T-Mobile came out recently and said that AI is really going to fuel the next wave of growth for the company in terms of where it deploys network equipment and how it responds to network complaints. And AI-based customer segmenting is emerging as a tool to reach new customers and create a lot more loyalty by actually anticipating churn and other capabilities such as that. And then there's shifting towards ongoing upgrades in 5G technology. Carriers are adding new spectrum to enhance their network capacity so they can add faster services and more data heavy services. And so they're really also improving the cost efficiency of their network. So it's more going to be not about grabbing growth at all costs, which kind of stopped several years ago, but really tightening their belts and being smarter about what customer they acquire and how they use their network resources.
Right. That concludes this episode of Media Talk. I just wanted to thank Lynnette for spending a lot of time sharing her views on what's currently shaping the U.S. mobile industry, as well as her insights about some of the things that will come into play over the next decade, going out to 2034.
Thank you, Mike, for having me. I appreciate it.
This is Mike Reynolds. Thanks to all of you for listening. We'll catch up soon on the next edition of Media Talk.